Well, let's speak now to UNICEF spokesperson Tess Ingram, recently returned from Gaza. Tess, thank you very much for joining us on The World Today. And what was the situation like when you left?
It was beyond the worst that I've seen in any conflict that I've been into, including the previous times that I have been into the Gaza Strip. Somehow, every time when I return, it shocks me to my core, and this time was no different. And of course, since then, the suffering has continued to worsen. Now the entire Gaza Strip is at risk of famine. 1 in 5 people face starvation. We're seeing children with malnutrition live streamed to the world. Diseases are rising, and of course the bombardments are continuing to kill people in large numbers every single day. And on top of all of that, we are not getting enough aid in to help people. So the situation truly is beyond our worst nightmares.
You may have heard me mention that statement from the UN saying that a team had waited for several hours for the Israeli green light to access the Kerem Shalom area and collect supplies to then be brought to warehouses. Go back to before this recent blockade to when some aid was coming through. Just talk us through the process of getting aid across the border to the point where it can be distributed. What needs to happen? What are the logistics of that?
It's a good question. It's a process that has always been very complex and very difficult for the United Nations and other humanitarian aid agencies. There are numerous unloadings and reloadings that have to happen at the crossing on different trucks at different points. There's screenings that have to happen. We have to coordinate our movements to get the green light, as you say, in order to collect supplies and then move out again. And then, of course, we're dealing with logistical challenges like intense damage to roads, insecurity, telecommunication issues. So this is one of the most difficult places in the world to do this job. And yet we have proven that despite those difficult circumstances, when we are enabled and allowed to do our work, that we can do it, that we can get aid to people that need it, including during the ceasefire when we really scaled up and were able to mitigate some of the really terrible threats that children were facing, including at that point in time malnutrition. But now we are back there again. And so we really are, UNICEF, along with other humanitarian aid agencies, calling for these challenges to be remedied in the flow of aid. But more than that, a handful of trucks is not going to solve this problem. And if we just count this small number of trucks, it's a distraction from the bigger problem that we're facing here, that children and their families continue to be killed and continue to be starved. So we really need to see aid to flow at scale for this discussion to be meaningful.
And just finally, if I may, Tess, once you get aid in, hopefully if that aid comes in and the people are now in perhaps a more desperate situation than ever before, how can you ensure that that gets distributed fairly to all of those who need it?
The risks of looting and insecurity at this current moment in time are significant, and we're realistic about that. We're facing intense challenges because of the deprivation that people have faced for the last 3 months, and that, as you say, increases their desperation, but also because of those logistical challenges and the lack of aid that is coming in. We've been very clear that if aid flows at scale, it is much easier for us to circumvent looting. So it is critical that we have the access routes. We need more than one access route into the Gaza Strip, and we need aid to flow at scale. We need to be able to do our jobs, because I've been to Gaza, I've seen it. I have seen that aid go into the hands of families that desperately need it. And I wish that the international media like you could be there to see it too, because it really does work when we're given the chance.
Tess Ingram from UNICEF, thank you very much. Around the world and across the UK, this is The World Today on BBC News.